A junior auditor at a firm in Mumbai is reviewing the AI risk logs for a client when they realize that a senior manager, who happens to be an old friend, has accidentally skipped a critical safety check. The auditor is tempted to just fix the paperwork and move on, thinking it's a minor mistake between friends. But integrity demands they report it exactly as it happened. In the world of ISO 19011, integrity is defined as the foundation of professionalism. It means performing work with honesty, diligence, and responsibility. In simple terms, it means doing the right thing even when no one is watching and even when it is uncomfortable. You have probably seen this at the office, where someone glosses over a minor error to get the job done faster or to protect a colleague. But in an audit, that shortcut destroys the very fabric of trust you are supposed to be building. Integrity is your personal brand as an auditor. If you lose it, you can never get it back. It is about being ethical and, more importantly, being courageous enough to be factual, even when the person on the other side of the table is a mentor or a peer. It is a refusal to compromise the truth for the sake of convenience. So now that we've mastered the core concept of personal integrity, you might be wondering how we maintain that high level of objectivity when we are under pressure. Well, that brings us to our next step, the principle of fair presentation. Imagine you are auditing an AI project at a logistics startup in Chennai. You find that the documentation is messy. Frankly, it's a disorganized heap. But their actual code performance is world class and remarkably efficient. If you report that the company is a disaster, you are being biased and ignoring its actual success. If you report that they are perfect because the code works, you are lying about the state of their processes. Fair presentation is defined as the obligation to report truthfully and accurately. It means your findings, conclusions, and reports must reflect the audit activities sincerely. In simple words, this is about being a professional mirror. You reflect back exactly what you see, the good, the bad, and the ugly, without your own personal opinion or past experiences coloring the picture. I once saw an auditor focus entirely on one failed spreadsheet while ignoring the fact that the entire system had prevented 5 major accidents that week. That is an unfair presentation because it misses the big picture. Your job is to balance the narrative, ensuring the organization sees a complete, honest portrait of their performance rather than a slanted sketch that only highlights one side of the story. So, now that we've mastered how to present our findings without bias, you might be wondering how we keep our professional judgment sharp enough to spot the real issues. Well, that brings us to our next step, the principle of due professional care. Consider a lead auditor at a financial firm in Delhi who is tasked with auditing a complex neural network. They aren't just skimming the surface, checking off boxes like a grocery list. They are asking tough questions, investigating the data lineage, and cross-referencing logs because they know that even a small error here could cost millions of rupees in fraud. Due professional care is defined as the application of diligence and judgment in auditing. In simple language, it means you don't just go through the motions. You work with the level of care and intelligence that a person in your position is reasonably expected to have. It is like being a doctor who doesn't just look at a patient's temperature and walk away. They listen to the lungs, check the medical history, and consider all the symptoms before making a diagnosis. In the office, this means being thorough even when it's tiring. It means realizing that if you don't understand a piece of AI code, you have the professional responsibility to ask for an expert rather than pretending you know. You are taking your responsibility to the organization seriously, and that level of relentless effort is what separates an amateur from a true lead auditor. So, now that we've mastered the need for diligence and careful judgment, you might be wondering how we protect the sensitive information we encounter during these deep dives. Well, that brings us to our next step, the principle of confidentiality. You are walking through the server rooms of an e-commerce giant in Bangalore, and you accidentally stumble across a confidential list of executive salaries or a top secret upcoming product launch that hasn't been announced yet. Confidentiality is defined as the security of information. It means you must handle sensitive data with extreme discretion and not use it for personal gain or in a way that harms the organization. To put it simply, what you hear in the audit room stays in the audit room. Think of yourself as a bank vault, solid, locked, and quiet. If you start gossiping about the technical failures you saw at one company with the managers at another, you are not just breaking a professional rule, you are committing a career ending sin. I have seen talented auditors lose their entire reputation over one loose comment made at a coffee shop or a conference. You must be like a silent observer who treats every piece of data as if it were a state secret. This builds a psychological safety that allows companies to be honest with you. When they know their secrets are safe, they show you the real problems instead of hiding them. So, now that we have mastered how to be the trusted keepers of secrets, you might be wondering how we stay completely neutral during our investigations. Well, that brings us to our next step, the principle of independence. Think of an auditor in Pune who is tasked with reviewing an AI model that their own department built a year ago. Even with the best intentions, they are going to be blind to their own mistakes because they are too close to the project. They have spent months looking at it, so they see what they intended to build, not what is actually there. Independence is defined as the basis for the impartiality of the audit and the objectivity of the audit conclusions. In simple words, it means you have to be the outsider, even if you are an employee of the company. It means you cannot audit your own work. You must have the distance required to see the flaws that others are too biased to notice. You have probably seen this in projects where the person who wrote the plan is also the one checking the plan. They almost always miss the mistakes because they are looking for their own success, not for the truth. Independence is your outsider perspective that keeps the audit honest. If you are too close to the subject, you lose the ability to see the truth clearly. So, now that we have mastered the necessity of keeping our distance for the sake of objectivity, you might be wondering how we actually collect evidence that stands up to scrutiny. Well, that brings us to our next step, the evidence-based approach. You are wrapping up an audit for a major tech firm in Kolkata. You cannot just stand up in the closing meeting and say, I think you need to improve, or I have a gut feeling that this is wrong. That is just your personal opinion, and opinions don't hold up in a professional audit report. An evidence-based approach is defined as the rational method for reaching reliable and reproducible audit conclusions. In simple terms, no proof, no finding. If you say a process is broken, you need to point to the specific log file, the specific meeting minute, or the specific line of code that proves it. It is like being a detective in a court of law. You need concrete, verifiable facts. Every conclusion you reach must be backed by a clear, undeniable trail of evidence. If you can't show me where you found it, it didn't happen in the eyes of the audit. By sticking to this, you move from being someone who judges to someone who verifies. It brings clarity, it removes emotion, and it ensures that the organization knows exactly how to fix the gaps you have found. You have finished the journey of understanding the principles: integrity, fairness, diligence, confidentiality, independence, and evidence. You are now armed with the foundational mindset of a world-class lead auditor.